Welcome back to Inspector Toolbelt Talk, everyone. So today we have on a podcast within a podcast within a podcast. And we have Shannon Gatewood on. Shannon, great to have you here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so I wanted to say that it's a podcast within a podcast because Shannon is actually the host of Homes Unscripted, another home inspection podcast, and we've been talking back and forth, and we're like, hey, we should be on each other's podcasts and talk a little bit, and so I'm really glad you're here today, Shannon.
Thank you. Yeah, we've been, like I said, we've been talking for a couple months, just trying to match up schedules and everything. So glad we were able to finally get a time to sit down and do it.
Yeah, so look up Shannon's podcast. It's really great. I laugh at it, and I especially love your showrunner. So the little blurb that you have in the beginning of the
Uh,
podcast, I chuckle every time I see that. That's awesome. But tell us a little bit about yourself, Shannon, where you're located, your business, and things like that.
yeah. So Shannon Gatewood, my company is Gatewood Superior Inspections. We're in the San Antonio, Texas market. I live just outside of there in a little town called Lavernia. Uh, 2017, I retired from the Air Force, and didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. So, I was talking to a realtor that we had used to buy and sell a few years prior, and she said, "Well, what are you going to do when you retire?" I don't know. I'll figure something out. And she said, "Well, you have a construction background, right?" Yeah. I said, "Well, you should look into home inspections because we're always looking for more home inspect. They're never enough to meet option periods and everything." I thought, well, we had just bought a house a couple years ago and kind of followed that guy around, who in turn is now one of my really good buddies. Um, didn't really know him at the time. He was just a a friend of a friend that I went to church with. So I was like, "Hey, use this guy." Like, all right, whatever. But I followed him around. I thought, well, I kind of have an idea of what I'm doing, so let me look into this. Looked into it. Thought, well, I didn't really want to be a boss, and I don't want to have a boss. I've kind of dealt with. For anybody in the military, they understand that you have 50 different bosses, and they change on any given day. I, I'm kind of finding that's not that much different in the civilian world sometimes, but but military, I was like, I'm done with this. I'm just gonna go out on my own. Um, Uncle Sam's gonna pay me a little bit in the morning to wake up, or pay me a little bit to wake up in the morning. Uh, with my retirement. So uh, if I can just do a few inspections a week, great. And I can have the time off, and the things I didn't get to do while I was in the military, of getting the girls on the bus and going on to field trips with them and being there when they get off the bus. Now I can do all that stuff because it's going to be my own business. Uh, been able to do most of that, but it went from the ones two inspections a week to where I'm turning away work. So, because I just can't get to it in time, especially during the COVID years when they were doing those crazy option periods of 3 days and stuff like that. But grown enough to keep myself basically full time employed doing inspections, which is not something that I really envisioned when I started this thing.
Wow. So, and you've been in the inspection industry 8 years, you said?
I'm going into my 8th year, so yeah,
Yeah.
June will be 8 years.
Wow. And so that's really good. A lot of times we think oh, these guys talking about growing into a full time home inspection company in the first year. First year, that's the meteoric rise to success. Uh,
Hmm.
happens overnight, usually after 5 years of building it, right?
Right, right.
And you're a good example of digging in the trenches, building your business with your own two raw hands, and putting your family first. I'm glad you mentioned that because too many times we say, "Well, I want to work hard for my family and be there for them and have more time," and then we end up having less time for our family, and that's not healthy. We should
Right.
put our family first. That's what we're
Yeah.
doing this for.
And that's almost where I'm at
So
now is I spend more time working on inspections and everything because I'm so in, and I don't want to pat myself on the back. I'm not going to give myself a bruise patting myself on the back, but I'm so busy with inspections that it's like, okay, I've got to tamper this down a little bit somehow.
That's a good problem to have. It's like the horse saying he has too much hay,
Right.
or oh darn, I
Yeah.
bought too much food to put in my refrigerator. Now it's overflowing.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't
So
want that to come off
good for
as
you.
if I'm complaining. So that's for sure.
No, no, that's good for you. That you've worked hard for that. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Um, Now tell us about your podcast a little bit, so that the audience can listen in on your podcast. Tell us how they can find it and what things you talk about.
Yeah. So, I listen to every one of your podcasts. I've listened to multiple different inspector related podcasts and stuff like that. And then, of course, the true crime podcasts that everybody likes to listen to. Uh, and I just thought, well, maybe getting out of my comfort zone and doing something like that would help me grow in other areas. Because, like I joked in the intro podcast that I did, is I have a voice for radio, or I mean, a face for radio and a voice for newsprint. Uh, so, this is definitely not my comfort zone, my cup of tea, but doing it and getting to talk to, you know, the Ian Robertsons of the world, the Buck Flemings, the other folks, Chris Story, excellent, home inspector that's now doing a whole nother industry of repairs and stuff like that with plumbing sewer lines. Uh, just getting to talk to those folks and having a reason to sit down and take some time out of my day to talk to those folks has really helped me to be more comfortable talking to others. And I mean, one of the things that's I'm working on right now is I got a call asking if I would be willing to teach and write and teach an 8-hour electrical course to present at the next year's TPRIA conference, which, for those that may not know, Texas Professional Real Estate Inspector Association. It's the largest association in Texas, and it's basically InterNACHI light. InterNACHI kind of runs everything under their umbrella, and then uh, we have a couple of directors that kind of run it in the Texas market. But you know, when I got that phone call, to say I was honored and flattered to be asked, that goes without saying. And then I thought, oh man, I gotta stand up in front of probably like 200 people in the room because there's like multiple different um, classes going on at the same time, multiple different tracks. Man, I've sat in those chairs and listened to the instructors, and now it's going to be me, man. And that little bead of sweat starts coming down. You're like, oh crap. But if sitting on a podcast and talking to people can get me more comfortable just talking in general, uh, and getting out of my comfort zone in general, then great. So I started Homes Off Script with the intent of just talking to not necessarily inspectors all the time, just anyone in that home real estate, market. So I'd like to get, just some contractors on here, a plumber on here, a whoever, to talk about what they do and how we can help homeowners or inspectors or those looking to buy a home or just anyone in that realm to learn something with their home. So about 5 episodes in, really, kind of dropped off. I did the four. I was staying on real good on schedule and stuff, and then life happens. You
Hmm.
get busy. Again, can't complain because I was busy with work. Busy with inspections. Um, so trying to get back into it. And I do want to keep it going. I feel like the four listeners that I have, two of them being my parents, uh, you know, deserve deserve some homes off script, Uh, but yeah, so great. I'm going to get you on there and have, an episode with you. And yeah, yeah. So I mean, like I said, just trying to get out of my comfort zone and do something fun and growth minded for me.
Well, that's good, and it's expanding you into other things. Like it makes you more comfortable with public speaking and teaching and things like that. So everything's always connected that way. And you know what I like about your podcast is that it's real. Like your podcasts are relatable. Like the one with you and Buck there. That was,
Hmm.
and I like Buck. He's my buddy. Um, you know, it's just relatable to listen to. You're real guys talking, and I think that's why I wanted to have you on for this episode that we're going to call the Windshield Perspective. I don't. Hopefully, that doesn't. I don't. I think that just means like driving perspective. But
And hopefully, I'm not a bug.
in this case, yeah, I don't know what if it means something different than what I'm saying. So if it does, I apologize to anybody. I don't know. But basically, what I mean it as is, you're a home inspector. You're hitting the windshield every day, driving to inspections, and your perspective is in between inspections. What's going on in our industry? It's you drive, you do your inspection, you collect your payment, and then you move on. And then we have this 20 to 40 minutes of windshield time where I don't know if it's like it is, if it does the same for you, but that's where all my internal reflection happens. And I start to contemplate life and the universe, dark matter, and, gravitational wells, and also the state of our industry.
Right? Yeah.
So it's very real world because we have guys on here, and it's really great to have a high level perspective of vendors, and Nick Gromiko was on, and
Hmm.
others that have this high level view. But I want to hear your windshield perspective. What are your thoughts on the changes in our industry? Things like big companies coming in and buying up portions, and even though the buying process has, I guess it really hasn't slowed down because I mean even Homebinder and other aspects were just purchased up. So, what are
Hmm.
your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah. So and yeah, driving, sitting behind that windshield on those drives. I agree. I get some of my best thinking in and some of my deepest thinking. I just wish like heck I remembered it when I actually pulled in the driveway and had the ability to write something down while I was driving. But that's not quite safe. But yeah,
Yeah, you shouldn't write
all
while
my
you're
good
driving.
thinking happens when I'm driving. Uh, anyway, I don't, none of it translates to the office. So, no, so industry perspective, from and I'm not minimizing myself, but from a low level guy, just doing out there on the grind every day. Uh, man, it hasn't slowed down in my market, at least. I look on the Facebook groups and there's a lot of guys out there struggling right now, and I feel for them. I wish them the best of luck. Uh, but I can't relate too much right now because I mean, San Antonio is just been booming and it hasn't slowed down.
Yeah, it's very
Uh,
regional what's going on.
It really is. And so San Antonio, for those that don't know, we call it Military City, USA, because we have all of Air Force basic training. We have a huge Army base and a huge Army presence, a big Army training area. We have Randolph Air Force Base, which is the Air Force Personnel Center. So all the personnel actions, and as big of a operation as that is, uh, so our town, I mean, you can't go to the store without running into somebody that was either in the military, current, active duty, retired, or works for the military as a civilian. Uh, so between the number of people coming and going all the time, I really don't think, and I haven't seen it in the 8 years I've been doing this, that this area will slow down uh, much. Obviously it's going to go with the ebbs and flows of the industry as a whole. Of course, interest rates go up. You see everybody take a little bit of a pause. and then 2 weeks later we're back to back to being busy again. Uh, so for those that are not in a market such as this one, uh, I think now is the time where you really have to just evaluate your processes, uh, and see how you can increase that profit margin, um, so that you're making a little bit more money per inspection that you do get. How can you cut down time on site? Whether that's looking at it into a new software, hint hint, or or just streamlining your comments and your routine. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, driving that, just sitting behind the windshield day to day, two ways every day, uh, it does give you a lot of time to try to reflect on ways that you can do better in your own business or grow, and whether that's adding ancillary services or whatever. I always tell people when I talk to new inspectors, I always tell them get really good at inspecting before you start looking at adding septic and pool and sewer scopes. And yes, all that stuff is value added. And we've talked about in other podcasts and other forums and stuff like that. And eventually, the home inspection will become the loss leader, uh, and ancillaries are really where the money is. I, I'm not sure I agree that there'll be a loss leader. Uh, as in, when I think of a loss leader, it's the plumber that offers a free service call so that he can upsell everything. Uh, well, we're not doing inspections for free.
Mhm.
I think it's going to be a pinch point in raising prices. I think eventually, you know, clients and potential home buyers will only spend so much for a home inspection. They only see the value as being X. They're not going to pay more than that, uh, which is a hurdle that we have to navigate, and everybody has their own methods and their own markets. I think where we do gain a lot of our market share, not market share, but our business is adding those ancillary services. But kind of like with anything, I mean, I don't know if I think that a professional inspector in Texas should be able to take some classroom hours, online hours, a test, and then run their own business. You know, I'm kind of a hypocrite in that way because that's exactly what I did. But should they have to go to work for another company for a set period of time to do a an apprenticeship like program that plumber has to do, that the electrician has to do, that the HVAC guy has to do? Uh, and home inspections is one of the only industries, at least in Texas. I'm not exactly sure what all the laws are in other states, that you can just take the courses, take your test, and hang a shingle out on, and now you're your own company. I know in unlicensed states, they don't even have to go through that much, um, which that's neither here nor there because I don't control any of that. Uh, and I'm not sure licensing is any better either. I mean, what is licensing like? I know you've talked about it on your podcast here. Licensing makes it look like all are equal. Well, I have the exact same license as this guy. Well, he's been doing it for 30 years, and I just started yesterday. I don't think that
Mhm.
does anybody any good either. You know, uh, but getting back to the point of ancillaries and stuff like that, get really good at doing your main job, and that's being a home inspector. Uh, once you've done that, then yeah, you can add on the WDI, you can add on the sewer scope, and that's where the potential to actually make the money is, I think.
Yeah, and Shannon, just so everybody knows, Shannon's been trying to get me to promote our home inspection app on our podcast a little bit more. That was a hint earlier. And we've had other ones like George Karampoulos. He's like, you guys need to promote your app more on your podcast. And I'm like, I know, but I like to just bring value. But thank you, Shannon.
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny. You're focused on the aspect of the question of the changing industry of the slowdown that's happening right now. And it is, we just did our Q2 market
Hmm.
outlook podcast a little while ago, and we talked about this, that this year just kind of stinks in a lot of areas. But Shannon, you're kind of killing it right now. Your area is really hot, and you've built up a nice business for yourself. So it's not just, hey, it's a hot market, I'm just riding a wave. You built something there that you do a great inspection. But I will say, I have said that in this podcast before, that a home inspection is like a loss leader, but I know what you're saying. I really view it as a way to get in the door and upsell ancillary services because, like you said, that's where we make our money, and it also brings more value to the client. If I was buying a home and the home inspector knew that he could do a sewer scope and a pool inspection and a mold assessment and all this other stuff, but never told me, well, I'd be like, what in the world, man? I could have used that. I had a sewer line break. It's not just selling people fish oil or snake oil or anything. Rather, it's selling them things that they need. They just don't know they need them yet. And
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. Maybe like you, when we've had callbacks, it's oftentimes been for things that a service that we offered that they refused. Our sewer line backed up. Like, okay, well, we said right in the report we recommend a sewer scope because it was acting funny. We ran 200 gallons of water in a vacant house, but that wasn't going to even fill up that 6-inch pipe that went out the wall.
Right.
So we did the load calculations for you, and you said no. I'm like, what? There's not much we can do about that if you say no. It's sewer scope's like a proctologist. He says you need to get that sewer scope done, so to speak, and we don't do it, and then we have problems later on. It's not the doctor's fault. He wrote down on a piece of paper, something's wrong with your behind, man. We gotta scope this out. So that was probably a terrible analogy as everybody's driving listening to this podcast, kind of
Yeah,
cringing
it
a
might
little
have
bit.
been, but I mean, I get it. I liked it. But yeah, it probably was terrible.
Yeah, oh yeah, it probably was totally terrible. But you get my way of thinking, Shannon. Um, what about other aspects of the industry? So besides the invariable slowdown, and I liked your point about getting better at inspections, because if you have an athlete in the off season, they don't just lay around wondering when the season's going to start. They train, they
Mhm.
get better, and then when the season picks up, then they're ready to go. We should be doing that. What about other aspects of our industry? Because you've been around for almost 8 years now, and you've probably seen some changes. What about things like corporations buying up vendors in the industry? The whole data grab thing that's happening, where everybody wants our data. It's like, whoa, home inspection data. Let's get our hands on that. What's your opinion? What's your windshield opinion on that?
Yeah, so I honestly, I kind of waffle back and forth between it. Uh, I listen to, you listen to one side of the coin and they're like, well, our data's not really worth that much. It's only worth, a few bucks per inspection. Then you listen to some others, and I don't know how accurate it is, and they're, oh, well, it's worth thousands of dollars. Well, I guess it's worth thousands of potential dollars if that one company can get a hold of the client and sell them every tool in their bag. Uh, but if they can't get a hold of them, I guess that's when it's worth $5. I don't really know. I'm not. I guess I'm not educated enough on the business side of the porches and the AmFams and the whoever else is buying up the industry. Who was it that bought up
Elon
Horizon?
Musk. Yeah,
Yeah,
Elon Musk is buying into the industry. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, probably.
Nobody quote me on that. Elon Musk is not buying into the
You got to have a
industry.
blue check
Not
mark
yet.
next to your home inspection company now. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I don't I don't necessarily like big corporations buying up little companies, and that's just from I'm probably tipping my hat to my politics on that. with that comment. I like keeping things small and family friendly and all that stuff. Although not getting into politics, it's the well, they say the right wing and the left wing are on the same bird or something like that, or the two sides of the same coin or whatever. Um, I think it's kind of inevitable that somebody with money is going to come along and buy up people that are looking to sell. Uh,
Hmm.
and their entire job is not nefarious. I mean, let's the elephant in the room, porch. Their job is their goal is they're not nefarious. They're not trying to damage anybody. They're trying to make money.
Hmm.
They're not calling up our clients and just blowing smoke up their butt just to put a rattle in the industry. They want to make money the same as any of us do. Uh, have they gone about the same or the right way? No, and I think they'll admit that too. I know they have admitted it at
Hmm.
times on some of the other stuff that they've done. Uh, but honestly, I don't think they realize the how opposed a good majority of the industry is to them, um, just from their big corporation, you know. Uh, and I don't know. I mean, I've never used home gauge, so I don't know what the um, how that worked out for them with AmFam. Um, whoever it was, again, whoever bought Horizon, I can't remember. They got bought out by somebody else too. Uh, I guess they're still doing good. I don't know. I don't pay any attention to them. But I do use ISN. I do use, my software is one of the ones that got bought up. So I'm deep in the mix of it, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I really don't. I've as we were talking before, I've given Inspector Toolbelt a test drive, but change is hard. You know, uh, just
Hmm.
saying, yep, that's what I'm going to go to. I like Inspector Toolbelt. I'm just not to the point where I'm like, yep, time to make the shift. Um, and a lot of that's just me being scared, me being a procrastinator in general. Um, but yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't think that those corporations are out to cause harm. I just don't think that their methods are going over well with with the industry as a whole.
Yeah, and going back to your point about too with our software, we always say that, and I've used this illustration with you on your podcast, is that it's like putting on a new pair of pants. The old pair of pants fit so perfectly. We got them all worn in and they feel good, and now we're putting on a new pair. Switching software is always difficult, even if we had really really bad software. Say we
Mhm.
were just using something from the 90s and they don't even support it anymore, and it got mailed to us in a CD-ROM. We would stick with that rather than change, because change is hard. But I agree with you that the big corporations don't necessarily have a nefarious. It's not like they said, "Hey, there's an industry of happy people. Let's go and
Right.
destroy them." But at the same time, the road to hell is paved in good intentions,
Right.
is the expression. You know, like, oh, let's go make some money, and you know what, we could really help the industry. And the industry is at its windshield, like you. I don't know what to do. I don't know how this affects me right now. And I think the data, it's important to remember we're selling raw meat. You buy raw meat and it doesn't cost as much as the finished hamburger.
Hmm.
But in my opinion, if you're the only one that can produce the meat, why sell the raw meat at a discount when the finished burger is being sold at a premium? You know what I mean? Or it's like, how McDonald's has gotten in trouble over the years. Man, I use McDonald's in a lot of illustrations. I don't really eat there, but I could really go for a Big Mac right now. But
Yeah, it
anyways,
does sound good.
they got in trouble so many times because they corner the market and they say to all the meat producers, we'll only pay you this much money for the same burger. And they're like, but our costs are up. This is all we give you. And so they basically price fix them into poverty, or they start producing a substandard burger, which was one of the problems. They were adding filler in because they couldn't produce that much meat for that price. So McDonald's is like, well, we have no nefarious reasoning here. We just want to pay this much money for raw meat, and then we sell it at a higher price. That's kind of how I relate it. And I don't think anybody listening to this podcast goes, whoa, that's a new opinion Ian's never expressed. I've expressed it 1,000 times. I think there's more than one way for us to be able to use this valuable data. We just don't know how to use it yet. It's kind of what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
Big companies, they know how to use it. They knew how to use it before they got into it. So
Yeah, that's why they
that
got
doesn't
into
mean
it.
we can't do the same thing. Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know why nobody got into it sooner. I remember first getting into home inspections and like, man, shouldn't insurance companies or I even said that to my brother one time. I'm like, shouldn't insurance companies and like even contracting companies and some of these big national companies get into this? Because this is the doorway into a person's home. The agent isn't. Really good agent
Yeah.
sells 5 to 100 houses a year. I mean, for a lot of us, that's just a halfway decent month, you
Right.
know? It So it's a home inspector does more transactions than a real estate agent does. So I never understood why it took them so long. But now that they're here, I'm kind of like, crud. Yeah, this
Yeah.
isn't as great as I would have hoped it would be.
Yeah. No, I
Do you
think
do
you're
you find
exactly
any
right.
effect on it in your data? But do you find any effect on your either your business or your psyche, so to speak, how you think and how you feel, having all that like market slowdown, corporations, not that they're related, but just unrelated.
Hmm.
Do you find it having any effect on your windshield time, so to speak?
Um, no, not really. Um,
Well, that's
I,
good.
I mean, it's one of those things that's in the back of your mind all the time. As
Hmm.
a home inspector that uses the scheduling software, the reporting software, all that in the porch umbrella, you know, there's I spend a lot more time thinking about getting out or what the
Hmm.
what the cause and effect is going to be down the road than I probably should. I mean, I don't think I should have to be thinking. I should it should just work. My scheduling software should just work. My reporting software should just work. I shouldn't have to give any thought to the back end type stuff, and
A
what could
larger
happen.
picture.
Right? Yeah. I mean, um, I'm just a home inspector. I just want to go out and home and inspect the home, do a good job, write my report, and go tuck my kids in at bed. You know, um, so to say that I don't spend any windshield time on it would be a lie. But uh, I don't think it really affects my day to day like game plan of I've got to figure a way
Hmm.
out. On it. Every now and then it'll pop up. When you hear like ISN was down this morning. I don't know if you saw that. Uh,
I
it
did,
was
and that was a
yeah
big deal. And they didn't open up until 9 a.m. And I forget which 9 a.m. was East Coast or Mountain Time or whatever it was. But there was a lot of unhappy people.
yeah
We're recording this podcast just for everybody listening on a previous date, so that you know that it's not today.
right yeah no this is
But
uh I'm sure it's long been solved. But like I logged in this morning, it didn't affect me, so I don't know if it was a regional thing, if it was just certain accounts or what. But I mean, that pucker factor went up a little bit when I log into Facebook and it says ISN's down, we can't get to our anything, and I'm like, oh crap, And I logged in just fine, but I shouldn't have to worry about it. Like I said, it should just work. Now,
yeah, and I
does that
mean
have
every
anything to
software is
do
good.
with being bought by a corporation? Probably not, or maybe it did because they're trying to change everything up now. I don't know.
Well, and every software is going to have like a glitch here or there. I guess the connotation is what the guys were expressing online was, it's not like the old days where you could talk to Dan or somebody and say, "Hey, what's going on, man?" And it's another inspector talking to us,
Hmm.
or a community. Now it's like, what are you gonna call the CEO of Porch and say, hey, why can't I get to my inspection? It's a different level of distance, maybe.
Yeah, no, that's a great
And then
point.
there's also, yeah, yeah, it's a level of distance, right? I think that's you're not as connected. It's not like you can just call them and say, hey, what's going on? It's okay. Well, chat doesn't start till 9. Nobody's answering emails, and then I get the corporate response, and I go through the prompts. But I always kind of wonder, oh, and not just Porsches, AmFam, and others. What happens if one of these companies goes under? I'm not that much of a financial guy to know what actually happens. So like Porches, we'll continue to pick on Porch here, I guess. Porch's numbers as of today were severely down,
Hmm.
and it made me wonder. I'm like, okay, so what happened if hypothetically, Porch just disappeared one day? What would happen to all the software? I imagine they would get sold as part of like some sort of deal,
Yeah.
either in pieces or in whole. And then who does that go to? What would happen to the software? I always kind of wonder about stuff like that, and that affects our whole industry. It's amazing how you could not affect the home inspection industry 20 years ago when we were still doing things on paper. My software, I was one of the first guys to use software. You couldn't affect my software. It was desktop software.
Hmm.
Like you couldn't take my data. You went out of business. I'm like, okay, everybody's on pencil and paper anyways. You know, now let's say one of the big software companies goes down, gets sold again, or disappears with some sort of weird, Wall Street transaction. What do we do? We're the guys in the windshield. How do we handle that? That's what I kind of wonder about. I'm not trying to give you extra windshield worry here,
Oh no, no,
but
and
I just
honestly,
wonder.
that's not I, it's something that has like come in this ear and out that ear because there's not a whole lot of space in there to hold things in. So I've thought about that uh, over time, like what happened, like I said, what happens. Uh, but you bringing it up that way is like, yeah, what the heck? What is going to happen? Because um, AmFam's not going away. That if
Yeah.
I don't think they're one of the ones to worry about. But you're right. Porch is. I mean, I saw something on one of the groups or something that, hey, can somebody decipher this for me? And it was something about they sold off a bunch of stuff to pay for this, to take another loan, or some this financial rigmarole and shuffling so that they could cover all their debts or something. And I was like, whoa, that's that's big to me. I mean, again, I'm not a financial guy either, so but just knowing, and maybe that's a
Hmm.
common thing. I could be making it sound like it's bad and it's something that happens every day. I don't know, but it sure
Yeah, I don't
from
know either.
this little industry called home inspections should be raising some flags, I think. And then when you brought that up just now, it kind of, oh yeah, that's right. I do I do remember reading about that. But no, I think it's a
Well,
great point.
and even like things like venture capital, like there's very few independent home inspection software companies out there.
Hmm.
Most vendors, I would say, well better than half, have been purchased by somebody. Um, so what happens if like venture capital comes in? They typically, we've been approached by, I'd have to ask Beon, but I think it's about a half dozen or more. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll give you a bunch of money, but we want this, 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 and this. It's funny. We've said no to all of them. We kind of laugh. We're like, I don't think you know us guys. Me and Beon just kind of, doing cool things and making cool things. And then they want to give us money and make it bigger. And we're like, you don't know us. But I think about it. I'm like, oh man. So venture capital stepped in. We have, so many thousands of user profiles. Now we change how we do things if that were to happen. And that
Oh,
affects
indeed.
all of those inspectors. Or what if one of the other independent software companies gets bought up or gets invested in by venture capital? They change and affect thousands of home inspectors day to day how they operate, what new features come out, who gets a
Mhm.
hold of their data, how that data is treated, privacy policies, um, literally how you go into your inspection and take a photograph is determined a lot and in part by your software company. Now that's being determined by a board of directors with wingtip shoes in a room with no windows.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff that rolls through my head in the windshield time.
Yeah. Now you're making me nervous. I got a
Now I'm
little
making you worry, Shannon. I'm
tightness
sorry,
and
man.
I've got tightness in my chest and that
No,
bead of
don't get
sweat's
tightness.
coming back.
Oh no, don't do that.
No.
You have that electrical course to teach, and I know we're just kidding
Right.
around.
Yeah.
Um, but no, it just makes you wonder. So for the most part, things have been relatively stable. It's like, oh, okay, so ISN or another company software goes down for a bit. Stuff happens. It's software. It's not like it's a post-apocalyptic zombie situation.
Right.
Um, but
I, I think it
I
just
don't
adds
know.
another level to it though. Like
Yeah.
if it was Joe's inspection scheduler and it goes down, you're like, well, Joe must Joe needs to fix it. But when
Hmm.
ISN, the embattled porch subsidiary and all that goes down, they're like, oh, what the hell? And so it's some it's a much bigger thing, and obviously ISN is a ginormous conglomerate of inspectors that use it. So when it goes down, it literally is a much bigger deal than Joe's
Hmm.
scheduling software that has his 200 users or whatever. But I think the thought process on it is also blown. Is it out of proportion? I don't know, but it's a much bigger impact, uh, and it makes you think of what is going on, why, and you almost want to say, well, they've got all that money now. It should just be flawless all the time, and you know as well as I do that that's not how software works, but you
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is definitely not how software works. But that's why we were asking you. I didn't want a vendor or someone who's not hitting that windshield day in and day out,
know.
giving me another opinion. I wanted a guy like you who has a good head about him, runs a good business, and is hitting that windshield day in, day out, inspecting and, you know, fingers in the dirt, so to speak.
Yeah.
And your perspective, Shannon, is spot on. So, nothing to freak out about. Nothing new is happening with the industry. I just wanted to get a fresh look at it, a fresh set of eyes, and I thank you today for your opinion. We appreciate it a ton.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, and hopefully I didn't butcher everything too bad. I mean, as far as
You didn't, but
it is a low level
you
view
didn't, and
of things. So
yeah, even if you did, which you didn't, but even if you did, it would have been even awesomer. So, um, you did a great job. And look up Shannon's podcast, Homes Unscripted. It's great. I make an appearance on there. You can skip my episode though. But Shannon, great to have you on, and we'll talk soon.
I appreciate it.